Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Age Better, where each week we take a deep dive into all the ways we can feel better, look better, live better, and, yep, age better. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. If you're like many of us, you probably noticed that staying fit and keeping the weight off in midlife has become a real challenge. I mean, who hasn't felt that, right? The reality is the average woman gains, are you ready, around 25 pounds by the time she reaches 50. And when menopause kicks in, those extra pounds can seem downright impossible to lose. With all the hormonal changes, a slower metabolism, and juggling life's endless responsibilities, it can feel like the deck is definitely stacked against us. But guess what? There is a solution. There is hope. And my guest today has some great news. Dr. Joan Grossman, who's an associate professor of kinesiology and nutrition at the University of Scranton, has done some amazing research on a workout method that's not only quick, but super effective. And it's something you've heard of about for a very, very long time, but maybe never actually did it. It's called high intensity interval training, or HIIT, or HIIT, as it's often called. And her studies show that this method of moving your body can help us shed those stubborn pounds, especially around the belly, hips, and thighs. Yay! And here's the best part. You only need about 15 minutes a day. I know. Yes, it's true, according to Dr. Grossman's research. Dr. Grossman's research also reveals that beyond slimming down and toning up, HIIT can lower our risk of chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes. So it's really a game changer for those of us who don't have hours and hours to spend at the gym or going for those long endurance runs, but still want to stay strong, fit, and healthy. And one other thing I want to point out about Dr. Grossman, she is one of the very few people who are out there researching post-menopausal women and exercise. Okay, so you know what to do. Pop in your earbuds, take me with you on a heart-healthy walk while you listen to this great conversation, and get ready to age better. Stay tuned.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
This episode is brought to you by United Airlines. When you want to make the most of your vacation, book with United. They're an airline that cares about your travels as much as you do. United is transforming the flying experience with Bluetooth connectivity, screens, power at every seat, and bigger overhead bins to help fit everyone's bag. And with their app, you can skip the bag check line, get live updates, and more. Change the way you fly. Book your next trip today at united.com.
Welcome to Age Better, Dr. Grossman.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Oh, you've done so much work, a lot of studies focusing on women and how they can keep their bodies healthy and fit. And we're going to be focusing on one of those studies today. And that's all about the HIIT, high intensity interval training, and how you, according to your research, shows that that is a really effective, efficient way for women to move their bodies to address some of the more common kind of like health and fitness and shape related concerns and challenges that they have.
Well, it's really a passion of mine. And I'll share with you how I became interested in studying this population. My whole life, I never had a problem with weight. Married later in life, I had my children, 36, 39, 41, and a few weeks later turned 42. Nursed my children. The weight fell off of me. And then around 46, 47, I noticed that things were changing. Now, I was always very active. In graduate school, I was a competitive triathlete. So I was always aware of, as a registered dietitian, knowing what foods to eat and the importance of being active. But then when I went through menopause at the age of 49, I saw a drastic change in my body. And it was something that I really had to pay attention to. Well, in the meantime, my research initially when I was in graduate school, my research was metabolic studies. I was always really interested in all sorts of metabolic work, but it was with young, healthy women. And I started to think that what is going on with this post-menopausal experience? And so I just decided that that was where my research was going to take me. And I started one study, and I was really looking at the real story is after I had my daughter Ava, and I was now 42, at Christmas time, I bought my husband this 90-minute trainer. And we were watching it on the screen, and I have a 6-week-old nursing her. And he said, you should really do this. I said, I just gave birth. They should make something for moms, right? Postpartum moms, like something like for 10 minutes. And sure enough, in about a year or two came out this DVD set called the 10-Minute Trainer. I bought it, and it was really tough. And that was my introduction to high intensity interval training. Meanwhile, my professional side of me is now reading all of these different articles about HIIT training. And so my work just became part of what I was so interested in personally. So I was able to secure some small grant money at the University of Scranton, and I started my first study, my second study, my third study. Basically, I was really looking for women who, throughout our lives, we care for most everybody. And at the age of 51, when most women experience menopause, they look in the mirror and they say, what has happened?
Yeah.
And most women just give up and they say, I will never get back to the jeans I once wore. And maybe that's so, but the reality is there is hope. And so what I have found is time is a big barrier with exercise in women. We are very busy. So the 10-minute trainer was something I wanted to test. And so I did. And so I have done several studies, multiple studies. My population was initially women. Then I was really focused on postmenopausal women. And I was interested in overweight women, which is defined by a body mass index. And then I was interested in obese women because they are the women that need the greatest amount of health benefit. And so I did several studies looking at the differences. They were randomized clinical trials or controlled trials, looking at if you take walking for 45 minutes or 50 minutes and you're walking at an intensity based upon your heart rate, or you're exercising for 10 to 15 minutes a day of high intensity interval training, where do you get the greatest benefit? And my repeated studies showed it was with this interval training.
I just have to stop you for 1 second. So what about with you personally? So when you started doing that 10-minute trainer,
things changed.
Did it work for you? Things did change. So you saw it personally, and then you thought, all right, this has to be studied more. I just have to share with you. I mean, people who have been following me for a while know the story already. So sorry, everybody listening, but I am struck by how similar our stories are, Dr. Grossman, because I too went through menopause and was finished and became postmenopausal when I was 49, like you did. I have 2 daughters, and I had my second daughter at 41, a few days before turning 42.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so it's really incredible, our similarities. And to your point, I saw my body change when I hit 50. But based on your research, why does HIIT, high intensity interval training, why is it more effective than that 45-minute walk or slow jog or slow run?
It's about changing composition. So we are a 2-compartment model. That means that we have fat mass and we have fat-free mass, like your bones, your pancreas, your liver, your organs are all fat-free mass. Some people will say, well, it's just lean muscle mass. Well, lean muscle mass is fat-free mass. But lean muscle mass is the only non-fat mass that we can change. We can increase it or we can decrease it. And so when you are running or walking for a long duration, in order for you to begin mobilizing fat as a fuel for your skeletal muscles, it takes a long time. Metabolically, because fat molecules are very big, they cleave specifically at the second carbon. It's called beta oxidation. So there are these very large molecules, but they provide us with a tremendous amount of energy. So it's kind of like they're sleeping. And if you're walking for, 5 miles a day, it's around minute 15, 20, depending upon the person, that you start to wake up your fat cells. You start mobilizing them. And it's not up until maybe around minute 40, 45, and it depends upon the individual, where now you're utilizing more fat and you're able to break down and reduce the fat in your body. But it takes a long time. So long duration exercise, you can burn fat. So if you've ever heard of somebody say, I'm going to go to a fat burning class, it's a lower intensity. That is true. However, the difference with high intensity interval training, and by the way, when I was recruiting my subjects for all of my work, did not use those terms. My term was short duration interval training, because
I like that.
the term high intensity, I think people are afraid of that.
Yes.
So
I can see that.
Yeah, I never recruited with that term, but when in fact that's what they were doing. The difference with high intensity interval training, you do not burn fat as a fuel. So this, like one example would be, so if it's a 10-minute workout, there may be 20 different exercises, 30 seconds in exercise. So you alternate lower body, upper body, and you're continually stressing the muscle in an intense way. So one example might be a burpee, right?
Yeah.
Your folks know what a burpee is, right? You're down. Now that's an intense
I don't
exercise.
know if everyone knows what a burpee is.
So a burpee is your
Explain
hands go up in the air, you jump up real high, you come down, and then you do a full, like a push-up, right?
Right.
And then you come back, you bring your legs together. They're hard. Now you can
Very
modify
hard.
burpees. They're very hard.
hard.
That would be an extreme example.
Mm-hmm.
But these 10 minutes, because it's such an intense exercise, you're building more muscle mass more quickly. So you might say, but you're not burning fat. No, you're not burning fat. And you cannot burn fat as a fuel during high intensity interval training. But in creating more lean mass, while you are at rest, you will burn more fat. Because you and I sitting still, the whole world, we're always burning a little bit of fat. We are aerobic beings. So we're always burning a little bit. The point is, when you start changing your composition where you're gaining lean mass, you're reducing your fat mass. And over time, that consistency with that gaining of your lean mass will change your composition. And that's what I have found. That it takes, now, one of my studies was a true weight loss study where I looked at calories, restricting calories. But the point is, I'm measuring circumferences, waist, your hips, your abdomen. It's where we deposit fat.
Yes.
So if those areas are being reduced in size, it's because the composition is shifting. And so you're laying down more lean mass and your fat mass is being reduced. And over time, the benefits are compounded. So there's more to that too. It doesn't take as long and we're so busy.
It doesn't take as long. Right. We're so busy. And that's a real benefit. In fact, one of the biggest excuses that we hear from people about why they don't exercise or why they don't move their bodies more is because I'm too busy. I don't have time. Especially women who have children, maybe aging parents and a job and community and fill in the blank and a life, a wonderful life, but a life that impedes the progress of moving more. I get that. We all get that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is very appealing that it's only 15 minutes.
Right. And those 15 minutes really. So what exactly is it? Well, I used the 10-minute trainer and I tested it, but there are all sorts of apps on a phone. The first 5 minutes, really the first 2.5 to 3 minutes, and the last 2.5 to 3 minutes is really a warm up and a cool down. So what you're talking about is 10 targeted minutes. Maybe every exercise is 1 minute. It's a lot, but typically 30 seconds, different exercises. And when you mix things up, you confuse your muscles. By muscle confusion, muscles respond more quickly in terms of regeneration of that muscle mass. So you see an increase or a laying down of greater muscle mass when you confuse things. Like if you're just going to do bicep curls for every single day, you probably, yes, you'll see improvement, but not if you mix things up and you do biceps and deltoids and triceps and your lats. So mixing things is really important.
Let's talk about actually doing it. So you're saying it's 15 minutes, so 10 minutes. I totally get that too. The warm up and the cool down, those are important, of course, so that you don't get injured.
Right.
So you do this for about 15 minutes. Ideally, how often should someone do this? Every day, every other day, twice a week? What's recommended?
It is absolutely sustainable to do it every day, but not until you build up to that. Now, I took women. All of my work was with sedentary women. That was part of the study criterion. You could not be in any sort of exercise program for 6 months prior. And there is a progression. The progression is, you start with 2 days a week for a few weeks, then you move to 3 days a week. So you have this progression. And if you're following a program, whether it's on your television screen or on your phone, there is always a modification. So you may feel like the clumsiest person in the world and you may feel like you look ridiculous. It doesn't matter because eventually you will improve and you will get stronger. So you can get to a point where you can do HIIT training 7 days a week. And as long as you don't injure yourself, well, you just want to make sure that what you're doing, your range of motion is correct, your positioning is correct, so you don't put yourself at risk. But there is no reason that it is not sustainable. I mean, I know myself, like I still do this and I am still sore, because you modify. If you're using a resistance band, you get a thicker resistance band.
Right.
So what's the beauty of it also is you can see how you progress. And I use free weights, I use resistance bands, and it's very simple to do.
And this is important. It's simple to do and it's relatively short duration, to use your term. Yeah. It sounds like you don't even need to go to a gym.
No. Yeah.
Or have a trainer.
You do it at home.
Is it a good idea to have a trainer in the beginning, do you think?
Well, and again, my template was, the 10-minute trainer. So on your TV, that was your trainer. And he's this guy who did this, Tony Horton. He's very good about making sure everything is correct, continually reminding you. So he is the trainer on your TV. There are apps. I can't really speak to what apps might be better than others. So it's not a bad idea if it's something you want to start to have a trainer, if you can afford a trainer, because they can be expensive. One of my subjects, she said to me, I asked my boss if I could bring this into my office and put it into my computer and close my office door and do it while I was on lunch. Well, she gave me the idea for my next study. So then I took it to a work site and we got approval at the work site and we had people at the work site doing it. So it's so simple. If you're in a hotel, you can do it in a hotel. I mean, there is no reason to have an excuse. It's 10 minutes.
It's really no reason to have an excuse. That is so brilliant. And the fact that it really, really does work. And, for someone who's been running marathons for now 17 years, I started running when I turned 50 as a way to counter all of those things, the changes in my body that I described earlier. And that takes a lot of time, especially when you're training for something as long as a marathon. 45 minutes is kind of short,
right?
Compared to some of those very long training runs. I'm not saying that you can't once in a while do a marathon and put the training in, but I think for most people are not running marathons. Most people just want to be fit and healthy and, at their ideal weight, at their healthiest weight. And this is clearly a great way to do it. I have a question though. I'm really very focused on bone health. I'm on the board of the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation. I myself have low bone density that I have successfully kept at low bone density for 17 years with everything I've been doing, including, push-ups and the plank and other things that I do at home, not at a gym and not with a trainer. And I'm just wondering, how do you feel this program, even done daily, how will that help keep bones strong? Or do you feel that most women who are post-menopausal and are at risk for bone loss, as we know we are, do they need to supplement with maybe lifting heavy weights?
Well, see, part of this, if you look at some of the exercises, it is resistance training. So, for example, with the 10-minute trainer, when you purchase it, you're given the bands. So when you're doing bicep curls, you have resistance against, it's a resistance that you're moving against in terms of the muscle contraction. So resistance training is critical for laying down more bone density. Mm-hmm. So there's two types of bone cells. There's osteoblasts that build up the bone, and then there's osteoclasts that remodel the bone. And so the reason we lose bone density as we age is because we stop moving. There's one landmark study done looking at the impact of resistance training and not losing your density. If you maintain resistance training for your whole life, you don't need to lose any sort of bone mass. Most people, by the time they turn 35, we lay down bone mass until the age of 35. And then after that, on average, people lose 10% of their bone mass every decade. So by the time you're 65, you've lost 30% of your bone mass. But if you unless you resistance train.
Right.
And so why does that happen? Well, think about your arm, right? Think about a biceps curl. So if I have a weight in my hand, your bicep is connected by a tendon to your shoulder, and now it's connected by a tendon into your elbow. And so when you are lifting that weight, it's tugging, the contraction of your skeletal muscle is tugging on the tendon and it's tugging on your bone. That constant tugging is what creates the osteoblast to continue to lay down more mass. When you stop that tugging, there's no need for you to lay down more bone mass. So that's why resistance training is so critical. For all of us, mostly women especially.
Yes.
Because, the risk is much greater for women because we're smaller than men.
And the drops in estrogen, and then, finally, when we have none, that accelerates the whole process for sure. We know that. And so you do address specifically the fat that builds up, what I call belly fat, which really is visceral fat, which is a dangerous kind of fat, but also the fat that is in our hips and our thighs. And you really feel, based on your studies, and I think personally speaking, as I can personally speak about this too, it does really help to address those specific areas. But talk a little bit about the health benefits of having women really focus on those key areas, reducing their belly fat, and specifically belly fat.
Right. Well, we deposit fat in the abdomen and in the hips, and women do. Men will deposit fat more so in their belly. And the fat in different parts of the body responds differently. So in the men, which we would call an apple shape, where they have a belly, the fat receptors there respond differently than the receptors for women in the hips and thighs. And believe it or not, women are known to have a pear shape. Not all, but in general. The pear shape is actually healthier when we look at chronic disease, because the beta cells are the types of cells that get stored, or they're beta receptors, in our gluteal and our hip area. And so the propensity for chronic disease, like high blood lipids, high triglyceride levels, LDL levels, and the risk of diabetes in maintaining blood glucose levels is less. However, those beta receptors in the hip area hold on to fat. They're lipogenic. They hold on. So women have a harder time with weight loss because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we hold on to more fat is for reproduction.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we're built differently in general. Men, the abdominal truncal fat that we call it, those alpha receptors, they are lipolytic, so they will break down more quickly. Men have an easier time with weight loss in general than do women because of the receptor sites and where they're located on the body. But those receptor sites put you at increased risk for dyslipidemia and high blood cholesterol levels. And so what we know is when we look at chronic disease, particularly heart disease and diabetes, but specifically heart disease, our waist circumference tells us a lot.
Yeah.
Years ago, it was a waist-hip ratio. We don't even use that anymore. It's a waist circumference. The waist circumference is an independent variable that puts you at risk for vascular disease and chronic disease. So as our waistline gets bigger because of where that fat is located, then your risk of disease goes up. So if you can shrink the waist, especially the waist, which is the most narrow point between your xiphoid process and your umbilicus, if you can shrink that because of those receptor sites that are buried within that fat there, our risk goes down.
Yeah.
So identifying circumferences around the body that reduce your risk is really important. And that's why I've measured different circumferences. Now I've measured biceps, waist, abdomen, hips, and thigh measures. But the good news is that if a woman has is still carrying a lot of weight and they have a pear shape, this is about changing your composition.
Right.
The weight may change, but it's about changing your composition to improve your overall health. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely. And do you think that, again, even if someone does this every day, 7 days a week, is that enough to get a cardiovascular benefit?
Well,
or do you think that there should be some supplementation, like maybe a little run or a little,
I think
fast-paced
people might
walk?
like to add it, but honestly, if you're looking from a health perspective, if this is done consistently, and that's the key, because initially, if you're sedentary and you start something like this, you're going to be sore, and it may be a turnoff to continue. Now, soreness is a good thing to a certain extent because because your muscles are being broken down and they're repairing, and as they repair, they're going to get bigger and stronger, and that's what you want. So I think adding a cardio component, absolutely, I would encourage it.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at really changing your mass, cardio makes you feel good too, right? I mean, you just feel those endorphins.
Absolutely.
So I would never discourage adding some cardio. But the great news is you don't have to be spending, an hour on the treadmill. So if you wanted to walk for maybe 15 or 20 minutes and do your 10 minutes of your resistance training, I mean, you get 2 great workouts for a reduced amount of time than like when I was doing, because it was really like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So what I would encourage is to do, if somebody wanted to add a cardio piece, I would do cardio first, resistance second.
Really?
Because of what I said initially. Yeah.
And it's like a warm up too. It's a super duper warm up to the, that makes total sense to me. So for those women who are listening in right now, who really, like a lot of people who were in your study, were sedentary, maybe haven't done anything for a number of years and are really excited about this and want to get started, but they're nervous about maybe injuring themselves. I mean, how should they really get started? Like you said, 2 times a week, try to see a program, an app, as you suggested.
Yeah. My suggestion is look at your calendar and what is the least cluttered time in your calendar. So you start there. And you have to carve out an appointment for yourself, number 1. And time and day, what day of the week is most beneficial for you? And I would say 2 days a week is realistic. 1 is just not enough to start.
Yeah.
So if it's a Tuesday and a Saturday and you have time in between if you're sore, then you have time in between to heal and let the soreness go away. And then, I think you just got to get started. And once you start, you realize you really can do this. You have the power within yourself to make a change. And it is not going to cost you a tremendous amount of cash at the gym. You don't have, you do it in your own home.
Yes.
And, you need a
I
few
have a set
things.
of exercise bands already. I know you said that they come if people do get that DVD, but they're so inexpensive. I got them on Amazon. In fact, I'll put a link to what I have in the show notes, everyone. And they were just like a few dollars, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what I use. Like I usually use the strongest one. I built up to it at this point. Of course, I
Right.
throw it in my suitcase. That's what I take with me when I travel around. And I just kind of pull it out during the day and do a few, even when I'm talking on the phone. It's really like a habit that everyone should start to get into, is using those resistance bands.
Right.
They're really,
Well, that's
really
what
great.
happens. And then you come
Yes.
to really miss your workout. That's the greatest success, when somebody's saying, I've missed it. I've got to
do
work
it.
out. Yeah.
Well, that's how I felt. I mean, it took a while for running to become a habit for me, but then eventually it really did. And then every study I've seen says that you need like 3 months or 90 days, whichever sounds better to you.
Well, that's
to
true.
really turn an action into a habit. I've done a lot of episodes just focusing on that whole thing of transitioning an idea to an action, to an actual habit that just becomes so ingrained in your life, a healthy habit, obviously,
Right.
that's so ingrained in your life that you don't even think about it anymore.
Well, and that is the paradigm for change, like physiological change. That's why cardiac rehab programs are 3 months in length, 3 times a week for 12 weeks. If you look at a lot of fitness facilities, the first of the year, they have a 3-month special, because that's just not a time that's pulled out of the hat. That is true. If you're consistent 3 days a week for 12 weeks, you develop that pattern and that habit, and now you start missing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. We covered a lot. I think this is really very exciting, and I think it'll really be incredibly useful for a lot of people. In fact, I'm going to start to do this. I really haven't been doing that exact program. I've been doing kind of a hodgepodge, as I mentioned, running. Of course, I walk a lot. I have a dog.
Yeah.
He has to be walked, and do some strength training with my resistance training. But I'm going to start to do this too, because, as I mentioned earlier on, now that, our bodies are in a constant state of change. And now that I'm in my mid 60s, I really feel I need to tweak. I'm always reassessing, and I like to tweak to make what I'm doing even more effective for me. So I think this is going to be something that's going to be really
good,
very appropriate for me too. But before I let you go, Dr. Grossman, and I always love to do this, please give us your 3 biggest takeaways that you really want the Age Better audience to remember from our conversation today.
Consistency.
Yeah.
So you want to be consistent. It is not difficult. And it's just a matter of really making up your mind to say, you know what, I am worth this. And to not doubt yourself. We have, and believe me, I want someone else to study post-menopausal women and body mass change. I think I'm the only one that's looking at this population. Most research with postmenopausal women is with bone density, but we have the ability to make the change. And it's just a matter of, I think, moving beyond that mindset that this is where I'm at, I'm stuck. And yourself, when you start, you feel so much better.
Yeah.
We sleep better. We eat better. We're more aware of the calories we're consuming. And it's almost as though you put your life back in order.
Yeah.
After taking care of everybody for all these years, it's time for us to take care of ourselves.
Yes, it's our time. What I'd like to say about that exact point is that for me, running became my foundation habit. And then from there, as you just said, I started eating better because I wanted to fuel myself better to run better. I was sleeping better for obvious reasons. I was physically tired. Mood better, it could, on and on and on. So all these other healthier habits kind of grew out of this one foundation habit. So everyone listening, if you're looking for that foundation habit, this one could be it. This one could be it for you.
And it's in the comfort of your own home. It's private. It's a small amount of time. It's so sustainable.
Yes.
It's a change. And these women that I have worked with, I see still this one woman, and she has been very successful, and she said it just transformed her life. It's a simple way, and then to see yourself get stronger. So I think consistency, really believing that you can do it, and we have the power within us to do it. You've got to carve that time out of your day.
Yeah, it's a commitment. Thank you so much, Dr. Grossman. It was great, really great fun. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Age Better Podcast, please do a few things. First, share it with all your friends and family. Then, subscribe to Age Better wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Finally, if you have ideas for topics you want me to cover in a future episode of Age Better, send an email to agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, remember this: we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.